Hey, Chris. That's the word I try to use too.
Okay, let me see if we can kick off this meeting here. For the Education Committee members, thank you for coming, your hard work today. Hopefully you were able to break for lunch, get some lunch today. We have 3 bills on the agenda to look at. First one we're going to hear today is Senate Bill 212. Let me begin by, as we always do, educators that are in the room, if you have taught or are teaching, hold your hand up. Let us recognize y'all for a minute. Hold your hand up, teachers. Thank you. There you go. Let's recognize them members. Educators, again, we'll you know, I have said this many meetings before that we're daily heroes, educators, at what you do for our young folks in this state on a daily basis. So thank you, teachers, for that. Let's start out in a word of prayer. Representative Ballard, do you mind opening us up in a word of prayer?
Please bow with me. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for allowing us to be together today. Please put your hand on us and guide us, and let us have your wisdom and discernment as we make policy for our children, who are our most precious thing in our state. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Representative. Let me state this, members. We are in the final lap, and we often call that a bell lap. And I don't know if you've watched track and field or coached it, but we usually, when that bell rings, you see the pace pick up. And the goal is set, they see it, and we've got the same thing on Sine Die set. So let's see if we can pick the pace up and continue to do good work that we've seen, members. Let's see, Senator Still, I believe you are up with Senate Bill 212. If you'd have a seat right here at the table, and when you get there, I'll cut on the microphone. If you would read your LC number to us, make sure we're reading off the same one, because we do have sub-members for these bills. I want to be sure we're reading off the correct one, and then I'll turn the microphone over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are working off of Senate Bill 212, which is LC 473473S.
Stand by just 1 second. Okay, the chairman doesn't have one. So read the number one more time.
473473S.
There we go. We're good. All right, Mike is yours, Senator.
Thank you, Chairman, committee, friends. Good to see y'all. This bill is affectionately referred to as protecting the information of minors in public schools. I represent the 1st, 4th, and 5th largest school districts in our state. And last year in campaign season, we observed campaigns that were illegally entering schools under the auspices of voter registration, only to harvest the data of minors for the purposes of political gain. When I went to Legislative Council about this last year, and I said, is this possible? Is this a thing? They said, shouldn't be a thing. They researched it further, found that in most states it's illegal. In Georgia, it's not. So what this bill does is it says that political campaigns and candidates cannot illegally enter schools under false pretense to be able to engage directly with children, K through 12, primarily high school. But in some instances, our research told us that they were soliciting kids as young as 13 to get their private data. So this simply says they can't do that anymore. In the midst of debate, I'll direct you to lines 42 through 55. I worked with the Senate Democratic Minority Leader, Caucus Chair, Senator Estevez, to draft this language to make sure that folks that wanted to talk at a football game were not going to fall under this umbrella. This is designed specifically to ensure that people are not going into the schools under some sort of false pretense. And so this just explains that's why we're working off a substitute, that we're not going to go in particularly for the purposes of election. So it wasn't anecdotal. We had hard evidence, and even through FERPA records, saw where campaigns were going in under the auspices of registering kids to vote. But those voter registrations were not connected to the Secretary of State, were never registered with the Secretary of State, and in fact, we're exporting that data directly to databases to help campaigns. So this is not targeted at an individual. This is not targeted in any way at one party or anything else. This has full bipartisan support from both sides of the aisle in the Senate, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Good job, Senator, here. So in what you're telling me there, Senator, you had some of this going on that you're trying to prevent within your district? You saw some of this?
We saw this happen in Fulton County, Gwinnett County, Forsyth County, firsthand.
And as young as 13 years old?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, thank you. Let me start by allowing a few questions to you, Senator. Number 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You said it has, just like quick questions. You said it has bipartisan support. I'm looking at the vote total. It was 19 against. So where did this bipartisan support come from?
What you're looking at is the sub. So this is the amended sub after the changes that were brought forth by Senator Jones, Senator Jackson, Senator Estevez, and others. So 42 through 55, as I was explaining in my intro, that's their language that they're supportive of, and that was not in the original. And that's why we're working off a sub. That's their amended language that came into it.
So the language is agreed, not necessarily the bill, because I amend bills all the time that I vote against because I'm trying to make it better. But so you're saying they're going to vote for this bill when it comes back across?
They have given me their absolute certainty that they would.
Okay. And then one more question. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, just real quick, because usually it goes through sub. So
It is. Go ahead.
On lines 29 through 34, how do you imagine that working if you're a parent of a student? So I'm a parent. I can't. A yearbook is a directory of students. So as a parent, would I be able to get a yearbook because I'm also a candidate? I'm just thinking the real world where, I mean, like in my area, all my kids went to public school. They've been in the school. I'm participating. I got the dad's club. I've got different things I work on. Will I be forbidden from getting certain information? Or if I come on career day, will I be forbidden? Because it's not a career day, for example, is not open to the public. A career day is me coming in there and speaking about my profession, but it's not open to the public. So I get the amendment, but I still think there's some issues there as me functioning as a parent/legislator.
No, that's actually it's a great question.
Yeah.
So in those situations, clubs, activities, sports, parents have agreed to that. They've signed off on that. They've given consent to share that information. So the fact that you're a candidate is irrelevant. If your campaign was soliciting that information, that's different.
So you're
you
saying-
as a parent, that's fine. You are protected under that. But if your campaign wanted it, if my campaign wanted that, and I was soliciting that information, FERPA does protect that, but it doesn't prevent someone from going under false pretense to do that. And that's the whole point of this bill, is false pretense. And that's said clearly throughout.
I get that, but you can't separate David Wilkerson, the state representative candidate, from David Wilkerson's campaign. And I would never do that because that would be misleading. What I'm saying, in your bill, you say you can only do it if it's an event open to the public. My local middle school calls me up and says, David, I want you to speak at career day. I go in there for career day as David Wilkerson, state representative, who just happens to be a parent, or maybe I'm not. It is not officially open to the public. It is just open to those classrooms, and each parent in the classroom, I don't believe, has signed off on a acknowledgement that I will be in there for career day, because they don't typically schedule plumbers or anybody else to say these are the people that are coming. They leave it up to the administration.
The only way that this would apply to the scenario that you created is if you were requesting that data and then using that to recruit from, solicit to those children because they're minors. You're not doing that in any other scenario as David Wilkerson, the individual. If you were doing that in your capacity as a state representative and you wanted to be able to use that directory for solicitation purposes, that's no.
That's not what you're saying.
It actually does.
Let me do this. Let me point out to the audience, too, that we've got sign up at the podium up here for public participation. Since we are in full and we didn't have a subcommittee, for time purposes here, we're allowing public participation. So you're welcome if you want to come sign up to speak to this bill, and we'll do that for each of the bills today as we get going. Let me keep working around the room. Senator number 25.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Senator, thanks for this bill. Question for you, and I'm pretty sure I'm reading it correctly. So it doesn't involve if a school administrator held a true registration, voter registration, whatever, where you had both parties at the table, one Democrat, one Republican, no campaigns, choose to register with the Secretary of State to register to vote. That's still permissible if the school board allows that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Going back to where I was flipping through it, Representative, if you could jump to lines 92 and 93 of the bill, I think that answers your question specifically where it says fraudulently organize an event. I believe as it carries through to line 100, that'll answer the question specifically to that.
Let us read that one, Senator, and I'm going to keep working around the room for the other questions. I believe number 1. Next.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
It's all me? All right. So what specific amendments did the Democrats in the Senate request?
Again, they added all of the language in lines 42 through 55.
Okay. And, Mr. Chair, if I have another question?
Yes, go right ahead.
So are nonprofits allowed to register to vote, to do student voters registration?
Yes, and that's why we added this language specifically in there.
In there, okay.
And they will continue to do that, and we want them to continue to do that. And if any one of you or any one of us in this building were invited to do that, as long as it is being correctly registered with the Secretary of State, as long as you've been invited and you have documented that you've entered the school under that invitation and coordinated with administration, yes, you can still do that.
All right, we're going on to number 4.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Steele, how are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for the bill. I just want to ask a question because this is like a personal thing that has happened for me in my district. So twice I've been asked by students at the local high school to come after school and speak at a club.
Sure.
And one was, the young Democrats. One was clearly partisan. The other one was just like young women. Interested in politics. If I were to go and say like, hey, if you guys want any more information about this, go to my website, sign up for my newsletter. Is that inappropriate?
No,
Oh,
that's
okay,
not appropriate
okay.
at all. No,
Okay.
and in fact, that's encouraged, right? So,
Right, okay.
again, you point
Just
out the
trying to
fact that
find the
you
real world
were
situation.
invited.
Okay,
You
yeah.
came to speak to them.
Yeah.
If you had come in there and said that you were hosting a Girl Scout cookie sale,
Yeah.
when in fact, okay, we want you to sign up this information so you can get that sign up data and then hand that
And then shift it right into
over.
campaign.
That's
Yeah.
where we're crossing lines.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, number 25 again.
At the proper time.
Why don't we go to allowing our speakers? Do we have any speakers? I don't believe we have any speakers that have signed up for this bill 212. Then I would say it is the proper time.
A motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
We've got a motion and a second, and I'm going to read out your LC number to you to make sure we're working off that. It's LC 473473S, Senate Bill 212. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. No. The ayes have it. That'll carry. Thank you, Senator. Get your bill moving. Let's get it on the rules.
Thank you, Chairman, and
Who's going to carry it?
Chairman Todd Jones.
Who is?
The gentleman sitting here up on the front.
Oh, he's
Y'all may
enjoying
have
carrying
met.
those.
Yeah,
with-
he
so
snuck
good
in.
job of choosing him. Thank you very much, Senator. Let's see if we can keep the ball and the bell lap running hard here. We are going down to Senate Bill 148. Let's see. Let's make sure my senator is here. My senator, if you would come have a seat right there in the front. What I'd ask you to do, Senator, if you would, read your LC number, and then I'll turn the microphone over to you.
All right, I am working off of LC 339823S.
Okay, that's exactly what we have, Senate Bill 148. I believe we have a sign-up sheet, so if anybody wants to sign up to speak to it, it's at the podium right there, and the mic is yours, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This piece of legislation is something that I've been working with Senator Ramon on for the past 2 or 3 years. We've been able to get it through the Senate, but have just come up a little short in the House. So what this is it is authorizing the State Department of Education to start a pilot program for outdoor education spaces. The Senator Ramon has a big passion for this. I do as well. When I was at North
You would
Habersham,
like the senator to sit up next to you.
Yeah,
He's
that would be-
welcome
if you
to. That way you don't have to keep referring back to him. He's welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
to Sit up there with you.
Yeah, so growing up in Habersham County, I went to North Habersham Middle School. We had a great outdoor learning center, and in 7th grade, during life science, it was very, it was educational, and it's stuff that I could really remember doing out right next to the Sequoia River. It was beautiful, and really, I think it engages students, and would like for more students across the state to be able to experience something like that, because I think when you pull a student outside and you can have more hands-on education, it's impactful and lasts longer with them. And so this would just allow a pilot program to begin. There was one amendment that was added in the Senate, and that was to allow teachers to have 5 personal days instead of 3, and that was at the recommendation of the school board. And then, if you'll see there's a sub today, and this was a late arriving request from CHOA. We require that every every public school in the state have an AED. And the caveat with the way the language is written is that the institution has to have a physician associated with the plan and training and implementation of the AED. Well, when you purchase an AED from a company, they already have a physician in place. So right now, schools, elementary schools, middle schools, they're scrambling to find a physician that basically signs off on what's already been signed off on by a physician from the manufacturer. So what this does is just remove that physician requirement so that we can have AEDs in all the schools, and it helps elementary schools, middle schools, public schools. And for those that don't know what an AED is, it's an automated defibrillator for when someone has a cardiac event. You see them in gyms or beside pools if you go to a public pool, but that's all it does, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to answer any questions.
First of all, Senator, thank you. Good bill. Let's look at anything here educationally for our children is very important to us. The AEDs, I can imagine as we have expanded those into the elementary schools, there's so many more elementary schools than there are high schools. So I'm sure that you're alleviating some of the burden of trying to find a doctor for every elementary school to approve it. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. I got you. We've got a couple of questions here. We'll turn over to you. Number 21, Vice Chair.
Hi, thank you, Senator, for this bill. I think we can all agree that our kids would benefit with more outdoor time. So I like that element a lot. Just a couple of questions pertaining to lines like 20 through 24. It says the Department of Education is authorized to select the elementary or secondary schools. Do you have any? How many are you thinking would be part of this pilot program? And I see in the couple lines down, the funding can be private, nonprofit, and local school system. Can you just discuss that funding and the plan of the pilot and the size that you're looking for with this bill?
You know, in a perfect world, I would love to see this in every school, but obviously that's not. Well, it's not attainable this year. But working with, I think, the Department of Education, we floated at least a dozen that we'd like to see these programs in, and there is a appropriation in the House budget that I'm working on with the Chairman of Appropriations to hopefully, but then also I know there's some local funding that can be used as well.
Okay. And do you know what that appropriation is?
What I know is I can tell you that there's several school, Atlanta City public school is using fund from Arthur Foundation, Turner Family Foundation. There's interest in a lot of private foundation to in order to donate some fund, so we can use that fund. And I'd say we want to do a pilot program around the state, not necessarily metro. We already have multiple schools around Atlanta. I'd rather have it all over the state, mostly in rural area.
Right. I really like this program. I like this plan. I would like to see a little more sure footing on the appropriations side and the plan to do that, the scope of the volume we're going to do, and what that would cost. But I love the program. So thank you.
Quite a few questions popping up here for you, Senators. Number 12, I believe you were next.
Thank you, Senators, for bringing this program. I do absolutely support a program like this. We have different learners, and learners who actually engage in nature. It's just a part of what I think all kids growing up should do. I'm wondering, because it's a pilot and I just took a look at it, can you tell me a little bit more about curriculum that may be used, any kind of assessment that may be utilized for our students? And if so, then how are we going to gather this data to expand the program? Thank you.
And thank you for the question. So as far as the curriculum goes now, I don't think there's a set curriculum that we can be used, but like when I was in 7th grade, we had life science. And so our outdoor education classroom was used for, we tracked monarch butterflies, we dissected frogs, we dissected owl pellets, we learned about the ecosystem of a river because there was a river running through it. And so I think there's ways to basically integrate what's already in the curriculum now, and that was just life science in 7th grade. But by tying that into outdoor spaces, and I know this is the purpose of this pilot program, it says it shall be to determine whether and how to implement the best practices and design standards for outdoor learning spaces. So I do think it's going to be on a case-by-case basis where, we were fortunate in Habersham County to have a river. Obviously, you can't teach someone about the ecosystem of a river if you don't have one. And I think it's just going to be, it may be a case-by-case basis, but I think the overarching goal of both of us is to get students outside and engaged in a meaningful way.
And do you mind if I ask the last question again?
Yeah.
Will we be actually putting together this data from all the pilot programs so that we can have kind of a blueprint on how to expand and how other systems can actually incorporate it into their possible middle schools and life science programs?
Yes, so each local Board of Education for each pilot school will provide that data. And then we can take that data and use it to expand across the state. Thank you.
That on there, dissecting owl pellets. I don't think that's ever been used in a committee meeting here before. Ooh, I couldn't find that one anywhere. Good memory, though, Senator, from 7th grade.
It was, I got to give a shout out to Miss Brenda Hunt, was my 7th grade.
Wow.
I'm telling you, it was a very meaningful year.
I can tell. Great. Number 28.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, thank you for bringing the bill. 2 comments. One, I was a sponsor of the AED bill and also was a person responsible for finding that funding and securing it in the budget. So thank you for bringing that. But to that point, could you state again on this pilot program who you spoke to about funding for this?
I have spoken with a certain chairman of appropriations in the House about potentially.
A chairman.
That's correct.
Would he happen to share the same last name as you?
He does. Yes, sir.
Did you happen to talk to the subcommittee chair about this, or maybe
I
the
have not
subcommittee
yet,
vice
but
chair?
it's on my list. If this gets out, I was going to come see you next.
So this is subject to appropriations, and you want to talk to me about appropriations after.
You got me on that one. I made a political mistake, but I will make it up to you. Don't worry.
Don't worry. I'll make a motion at the appropriate time. I'm just not sure it's going to be the one you want.
I'll beg for forgiveness.
Senator, sometimes your last name will hurt you. Number 25.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of questions for you. I guess the outdoor classrooms and the pilot program, we've got schools already doing this. So I'm wondering, is there a need? I mean, what's the? I like it. We've done it. We do it on St. Simon's with the ocean and everything else. We've done it. I've done it at the Career Academy before with the ag. So I guess what's the need for a pilot program if we already have schools doing it, or are you just trying to get the exposure out there?
I think it's obviously exposure, but it's gathering more data and encouraging it in more spaces. Obviously, it's in rural counties, but not necessarily in Atlanta. And if I may, you may want to.
Just saying, because just because your school is doing, not necessarily the entire state is doing. We want most of the kids in our state go outside more, learn, spend more time. Because nowadays, kids spend so much time in devices and phone and everything else. Really, we don't even go outside anymore. So that's to encourage young generation, young kid to go outside, and that we're going to last with them for the rest of their life.
It's just more like sharing best practices,
Yeah,
things
best
like
practices.
that.
And your school could be part of that too. If you're doing good, we can learn from your school, your district.
Okay, and then the safety plans. Most of those, I guess, GEMA, have you talked to GEMA about that? I think most of those require often, making sure the AED devices is in the plan and training exercises, things like that. Have you checked with GEMA to see what their guidelines were regarding the school safety plans they have in schools? I don't want to undercut it. They may be doing it 4 times a year, and you're asking for twice a year.
No.
So I would hate to go back from 4 to 2 if that's the case.
No, I think, and I'll be honest, I just saw this sub before we got in here, but I have been speaking with Cho about this. But my understanding, and if you look at lines 66 through 69 and 77 through 79, my understanding is that all it does is it takes away the requirement for a licensed physician or other person authorized by the Georgia Composite Medical Board to supervise or ensure compliance with the requirements for training, notification, and maintenance of the AEDs, because those companies already have those physicians. And so instead of requiring the elementary schools to get their own physician, they can rely on the physician with the company itself.
Senator, let me do this to help out. I believe Joe is here. If you'd
Okay.
like them to explain that. If
That would
you
help.
would come
Yeah, thanks.
to the podium up here, I'll cut the microphone on. Introduce yourself, please, and would you address the question?
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Tara Buchholt with Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. Appreciate y'all considering this substitute. So this was originally HB 629, Chairman Hawkins' bill that just didn't make it on crossover, and it is a cleanup to last year's AED bill. So last year, when they went to edit the AED language, it originally required high schools with athletic programs to have AEDs. That's been around since, I think, the early 2000s. And when they went to edit it, they left in language requiring physician involvement. So they created this robust plan where schools have emergency response teams, EMS is involved, notified, they do drills, but left in this need for physicians. And so as you can imagine, when they expanded that from high schools to all K through 12 schools, this is now a significant number more, looking for, and the language was physician involvement, which led to questions on what that means too. And so it turns out we went back, did some digging, and originally there was no physician. You had to have a physician to buy an AED, and you had to have a physician to read on the back end when it was used. AED companies now, in an attempt to increase access, as the senator said, we now see them in Publix and community centers and playgrounds. And so AED companies now have these physicians internally to help do all that, and you have EMS notified through this. So we're just trying to remove, we had a lot of schools calling Children's, because we do have programs to help make schools heart safe. So they were calling Children's looking for that, and we realized, that's not really a step we needed. And so Chairman Hawkins was trying to do this cleanup this year, and so we appreciate having that involved here. So with that summary, can I answer any other questions?
That's perfect. Thank you.
That's it. And from what I hear, happy birthday.
Thank you.
And they're working on your birthday from
Would
Joe.
love a bill.
Thank you. Love the bill. I'd like to get a birthday bill.
Happy birthday. It's a great day.
Well, it's a great day. Happy birthday, Representative.
I'm a little bit older. Maybe a lot bit.
Thank you for that answer. And I'm going to entertain just one more question, and then we'll ask what the will of the committee is. Number 10.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator, thank you very much for bringing this. My only caution, and I'm in support of the bill, but my caution is this to Representative Townsend's statement. In Forsyth County, we have an outdoor classroom at Shiloh Point Elementary School. The parents got together, the businesses got together, and did what amounted to about $250,000 outdoor classroom. Amphitheater with boulders, 7 outdoor gardens, walking paths, you name it. It's a kid's nirvana. So I'd love to be able to see, and maybe at the DOE, they don't even take time, because I know the chairman's trying to move this along, but if there's an opportunity to make sure that we are not just looking for the state's tax money, but my hunch is you feel the same way. How many times can we get the community involved? Because at Forsyth County, we were able to make it a rallying point, and on the final day, we had about 250 parents come out to help get the installation done. We still have pictures of it. It's pretty amazing, and I think this is a great opportunity to get parents involved, kids involved. There were children there helping to get it done, etc. So I mentioned that just as an opportunity because you did say on line 22, it isn't just about the appropriation, but also around private, nonprofit, and I would add, even though it's not written there, parents, kids, just making sure that they got a hand in this.
Yeah. Thank you, and I agree.
Thank you, Senator.
Birthday, I don't think I would break this rule, but I'm gonna break it because it's your birthday. I said last one, but we're gonna let birthday boy, what you got?
Just an observation to my friend and fellow floor leader. Also, don't forget, if it's planned well, local school systems currently have a mechanism with ELOST funds for classroom space. And I know in my community, we were able to have an outdoor classroom that was in proximity while we were updating a school. So that's also a tool that a lot of superintendents can utilize in their capital outlay planning. So just not saying I'm against the idea. I want to make sure that you know that, but don't forget that there are local options currently available to them. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Okay, I've wiped the board clean here for us to see what the committee wants to do. We have a motion to do pass. Do we have a second? Okay, we have a second. Do we have anybody signed up to speak on this bill? I don't believe we do at this time. Then, members, hearing no more discussion, let's vote on LC 339823S, Senate Bill 148. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Okay, your bill carries. Senators, good job with this. Thank you for good learning opportunities here. And who is going to carry the bill for you in the House?
Yes. Okay, it'll be Sue Hong.
Okay. All right, Sue Hong. We got you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's do this just for a second, members, or just for 5 minutes. I'm going to recess for 5 minutes for you to look. We've had this bill not a very long time, but Senate Bill 1. I'm going to ask the author to come up to the front, give you a couple of minutes, take a break, and then we'll call this meeting back to order. I will say in 4 minutes, give you about 4 minutes, sit here to study.
Yeah, man.
me point out to the visitors, we do have copies of this bill at the podium right up there, the most recent sub and copies that we have right there. Let me think. We have also got sign-up sheet for anybody that needs to speak up there. And Senator, thank you for coming up. Thank you for your bill. And I know we have discussed this some, as the representative next to you, Senator, has had a similar type bill in our committee. Let's do this. I want to make sure, members, we are working from the same sub LC number. So, Senator, if you'd read your LC number off to me, then I'll turn the microphone over to you.
LC 492383S.
That's correct. That's what we are working off of. It's yours, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I am happy to have Representative Bonner sitting next to me because, Mr. Chairman, as you referenced, he's done a lot of work on a very similar bill, which we heard in a Senate subcommittee that I had the opportunity to chair. I believe that it was last week. And he certainly did an excellent job presenting his bill. And so I'm tangentially familiar with his bill, having heard it, but certainly wanted him to be here to help highlight any differences that are part of SB 1. And to you, Mr. Chairman, I know you've been involved in giving us input on the sub, and certainly appreciate the House's input on this as well. Senate Bill 1 really stands on the shoulders of a number of House representatives. Representative Wade, who carried the original bill that is currently in law. I know that Representative Jones has been involved in this on a personal matter as well as a legislative matter also. So I'm going to first say that this is a Save Girls Sports bill, and I'll put that in quotations just because that's the colloquial language that we recognize this in the news. So it's very similar to the House bill that Representative Bonner carried. So what I'd like to do is just highlight a few similarities, and then I'll also highlight some changes. Okay. The first change that you'll notice is on line 26. We borrow the title that Representative Bonner had in his bill. We name this bill the Riley-Gaines Act of 2025. You'll see that same language on line 51. We define sex in this section of code on lines 63 through 68. We do that with an eye towards reproductive potential, which is the same way that Representative Bonner defined it in his bill. On line 83, we define sex using similar House language to what you all would have seen in this committee and on the floor of the House. Starting on lines 86, we define sleeping quarters, and we utilize House language there as well, which is an adjustment from Senate Bill 1. Line 120 to 141 really gets to the core of the bill, and it gets to what we're doing here. And what we're doing is we are creating a boundary around female sport to prevent the inclusion of male advantage in female sport. And that is really the core of what we're trying to do. We recognize both biologically, anecdotally, and statistically that there's inherent male advantage when it comes to sports, and we want to create a boundary around female sport that excludes that male advantage from being in female sport. On line 137 to line 41, you'll also see similar language around the visual screening that we prohibit in the bill, and then we also adopted House language as it relates to medical records and other standard medical procedures that a school might otherwise have, such as a school physical, that would allow the confirmation of a student's sex. You'll see language again around restrooms and changing rooms on 179 to 185. And with an eye towards that, we adopted House language as it relates to the caveats on athletic trainers, coaches, and the like. And you'll see that language on lines 199 through 207. Something that's different from the Senate Bill 1 versus the Riley-Gaines Act as it passed the House is y'all use the PSC, Professional Standards Commission, to adjudicate complaints. We utilize the existing complaint standard as it exists in schools today to adjudicate the non-lawsuit portion of a complaint. So there is a private right of action in this bill, but as it relates to an aggrieved student that wants to file a complaint, they can do so using the existing professional at the school who is currently assigned to do that under current law. And you will see that language first introduced on line 259, and then we get specific as it relates to this bill on lines 268. We also include an appeal process with some appellate deadlines as it relates to that in-school complaint. You'll see that on lines 290 through 292. I referenced the private right of action a second ago. You will see that language starting on lines 346. And you'll see a 2-year statute of limitations as it relates to that private right of action that begins on lines 267. The back half of the bill, whereas the first half of the bill related to K through 12 schools, the back half of the bill is related to institutions of higher ed in the state. And it does the same thing with the exception of the in-school complaint process because there is not currently a mechanism to do that. So that is treated differently in this bill. The other substantive difference between this bill and Senate Bill 1, and the Riley-Gaines Act as it passed the House is there were a number of other areas of the code that the House bill touched. Things like organ donation, there were some foster care areas, and there was a hate crime area of the bill. There was really, I think, a couple dozen different code sections that were where gender was replaced with sex in the code. We did not do any of that in Senate Bill 1. Senate Bill 1 is exclusively written with an eye towards athletic competition, and that is another difference between the bill that you all passed and the bill as it passed the Senate. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I know that you all have had extensive conversation around the macro topics. I won't go into the why behind the what, but that is Senate Bill 1 with a number of House additions and tweaks. I'm happy to answer any questions. I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
Cut on here, and let me begin. Do Representative Bonner, do you want to have any comments before I open up to questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just say that I think the bill before you represents a good common sense compromise between the two measures between the House and Senate. Again, as I said in our previous committee, I think it underscores the importance of this topic when both chambers put forward bills to address it.
Okay. Members, let me open up to some questions. Thank you, Senator, for your bill and getting us started here and getting us going. Thank you, Representative, for your comments. Let's start with Vice Chair. You've got a question.
Yes, thank you, Senator. I appreciate it. On lines 435 to 437, it says participating non-state schools means a private secondary education institution that is eligible for tuition equalization grants. I just wanted clarification on that. Are we applying or setting policy for our private schools through this, or am I missing something?
No, that's correct. So if essentially the hook to be included in this bill is if you take state money, then you are captured in this bill. Under the K through 12 provisions of this bill, what would be the hook that would include you in that would be participation in state-sanctioned athletic competition.
Okay, so are you saying that with our tuition, our vouchers, any policy that we set, we can start doing that for a private school?
No, this is specific to this bill, which I believe was part of the House bill as well, if I recall correctly.
Okay. I just want to make sure that's a slippery slope. I want to make sure how we're addressing that. So
the language that you're seeing before you, Representative, is exclusive to the language that is preceding it in that code section of the bill.
Thank you.
Okay. Number 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Real quick question on lines 139 to 141. I guess, and I apologize if you mentioned this earlier, I guess we took out the part about the birth certificate. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And now we're relying on standard medical procedure. What's that?
Let me read the line that you're referencing. So this is not in the definition of sex, but the birth certificate, I think, in the House bill was included in this area. And I believe that what Representative Bonner is capturing, because this is House language here, but I'll let him speak to that, are things like the school physical that are typically a part of enrolling in or signing up for school athletics. Do you want to add to that, Representative?
Yeah, this was one of the changes that we actually even made in 267 in this committee, whereas we wanted to prohibit a visual inspection, but we did want the school to be able to rely on the medical records and the procedures that they have in place. Again, the discussion that we had at the time was, every kid that participates in sports has to get medically cleared in order to do that. And so the school can rely on some of those records for the purposes of adjudicating the sex.
Okay, I just don't remember them checking organs, so I was just curious if that's, but that's, the physical is what you're talking about? Okay, and then second question and last question. We talk about Thomas and Gaines a lot, and I know this is named after Gaines, and I said I would make sure I got this across and ask this question. What about Ruck, Ivy, Passion, Nordman? Have you heard those names before?
I have not.
Okay, those are the people that came in first through fourth in the meet where we're complaining about this male athlete beating Riley Gaines. So I'm just curious why we're naming it after someone who came in fifth place.
Well, we're naming this after an All-American. And Representative, I'm sure that you were a phenomenal athlete. I was an okay athlete, but I was never close to being an All-American. And we heard testimony in the Senate Special Study Committee that we did last off session, not only from Riley Gaines, who was an All-American in multiple events, but we heard testimony from Reka George, who was not an All-American in an event because she finished number 17. And that sounds insignificant until you realize that if you finish 1 through 16, you are an All-American. So Reka is not an All-American in that event today because the male inclusion in that specific event, that, by the way, today would not be allowed.
So why don't you name it
NCAA
after her?
rules.
I mean, I get it, but I mean, she still got a medal. I mean, she was fifth, which is better than 17th, but.
Well, she finished, actually, she medaled in other events. You're picking out one particular event. And yes, she was given a medal to stand with on the podium, but she was not allowed to take the medal home, as she testified, because the medal she was told the medal had to go home that day with Leah Thomas and that she would be mailed her medal.
Okay, let's move on here. I don't see any other questions, members, at this point in time. Well, yep, number 10.
At the proper time, sir.
Okay. Thank you for that. Let's open up the podium up there. We have quite a few that have signed up here to speak. Let me call on you. Let me do this too. Let me just kind of set some time expectations since we have so many signed up here to speak to this bill. Let's do 2 minutes. Let's try to get this done at the microphone for me, if you would, at 2 minutes. Tell your most important stuff first. Let's start out here at the podium. We've got Matt Sharp. Where are you at, Matt? If you would come over there and introduce yourself, Matt, and then the podium is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Matt Sharp. I'm senior counsel with Alliance Defending Freedom. Our law firm represents female athletes across the country, from Connecticut, Idaho, West Virginia, and other places that have lost out on opportunities because of policies that allow men to compete in women's sports. As we all know, Georgia is one of the few states, especially the only state in the Southeast, that has not yet passed a Save Women's Sports law protecting equal opportunities. Everybody has a place to compete in sports. But the question is, what is the most fair way to do it? We don't allow the senior in high school to play against the middle school students. We don't allow the 220-pound student to wrestle against the 110-pound age category or weight category. Nor should we allow males to compete against females. And that's because we know those physiological differences that even a recent study out this past December from the Journal of Applied Physiology recognized that these differences begin even pre-puberty, that those athletic performance differences begin to occur then. So this bill simply sets an eligibility rule that males are not eligible to compete in women's sports in line with other eligibility rules that we have in sports. We also appreciate that this bill is seeking to protect privacy as well, especially on overnight school trips involved with athletics. We would love to see that expanded to all school field trips, because we also represent a young woman in Colorado who was told she had to share a bed with a male on an overnight school trip, a middle school girl that was required to do this. Finally, we're encouraged how this bill aligns with court precedent that we're seeing across the country, most notably from here in the 11th Circuit, that has upheld policies by schools that recognize the differences between males and females, recognize the permissibility of separate spaces, and even recognize that commingling of the sexes in athletic performance takes away those opportunities from young women. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. That was minute 45, so thank you very much. Appreciate that. Valina Pierce. If you would introduce yourself, and then the microphone is yours.
Hi, y'all. I'm Evelina Pierce. It's rare to get to play with trans athletes. There are fewer than 10 trans people playing sports in Georgia schools right now, but I'm lucky enough to have played ultimate frisbee, and our leaders have made sure that people of all genders are welcome to play on the teams where they feel most comfortable. We score by catching a frisbee in an end zone, and our bodies often make contact when we're playing person to person or zone defense. It's an athletic, physical sport. There have been times when I've been 10 inches taller and at least 60 pounds heavier than the smallest player on the field. Sports have been a place where, as a woman, my bigness and power have been affirmed. When I hear criticisms of transgender women athletes saying that they're too fast, too strong, or too big, I feel those words echoing the societal messages that I've internalized about my own body. This anti-trans legislation is also anti-woman legislation. The messages you are sending to women, trans women and cis women, is to be smaller, weaker, less. Barbara Banda, a cisgender soccer player, has been experiencing this acutely as she has been harassed for being trans as a punishment for being talented. It sounds like you don't know many actual trans women athletes, because Leah Thomas, a non-record breaking, non-Georgian, has been brought up over and over again. In these hearings, I've also been hearing about men's records. Trans women are not men. Playing with trans women has been safe, fair, and fun for me. Honestly, I've played with or against trans women and had no idea that they were trans until much later. To be clear, they are no more worthy of playing than trans women who I did know are trans. This is just to say that the picture you are painting is inaccurate. The idea that trans women are across the board faster, taller, and stronger
Belina,
than cis
about
women
10
is
seconds.
untrue.
Close out, please.
I'm one of the coaches on a professional team. Cisgender women on our team have played against transgender women. It is inclusive, and this is partially because women have created the rules. I noticed the people who are bringing forth these anti-trans bills are men. We need women to be actually creating the rules under which we play, not men. This bill is not about protecting
All right,
women.
Belina,
It's about
thank you.
hatred of trans people.
Appreciate you.
Women don't want this.
Next up, Carrie Scott. Carrie, introduce yourself there, and if you would, 2 minutes, please.
Sure. My name is Carrie Scott. I'm speaking on my own behalf. I'll let others talk about the cruelty and pointlessness of this bill, but as a lawyer, I wanted to focus on the absurdity of how overbroad and arbitrarily it's written. For one, the bill says that no covered entity, including universities, shall operate or sponsor a team in any intercollegiate competition that permits any male, not just a student athlete, but any male, from using a multiple occupancy restroom designated for females in conjunction with such competition. So my question is, how many times do I have to use the women's restroom at Sanford Stadium before the Bulldogs start losing scholarships? I'll also note that the definition of male and female in this bill is so arbitrary as to become practically useless. Who walks around a department store and says, oh, can you show me the bathroom for the people who would, but for a historical accident, have created an egg in their reproductive system? Like, say that out loud. That doesn't make any sense. In fact, the mammalian egg in reproductive systems wasn't discovered until the 1800s. George Washington died in 1799. So under this bill, he would have no idea how to define a woman. I'll also point out that, there's a lot said about safety for this bill. Well, the bill specifically allows males to practice with females. So unless the contention is that athletes don't get injured in practice, they only get injured in competition, this whole thing about this being a safety issue is ridiculous. I'll also note there's a specific exception for trainers to enter locker rooms and restrooms, and I guess this is, but the boogeyman is supposed to be the trans kids going to the locker room. I'm sure that the USA Gymnastics team would have something to say about who is actually the predator in a locker room.
10 seconds.
And I'll just ask that you reject this bill. It's hateful and cruel. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Noel Heatherland.
Hi, my name is Noelle Heatherland, and I work for Georgia Equality. I'm here on behalf of our organization and as a Georgia resident. I'm going to try to talk fast because I have a lot to say and I won't get to all of it. I'm showing up in support of protecting all girls and women from the harmful consequences of this bill. All of us agree that we care about keeping women and girls safe. We have asked in prior testimonies on these bills for everyone to care about the human rights of trans Georgians, but it seems some of you only care about some Georgians' safety. As a survivor of childhood sexual abuse and domestic violence in adulthood at the hands of men, I am for taking steps to protect girls and women. While this bill targets trans girls and women, other people will also be negatively impacted. Women and girls should not be afraid of being called out for being too good at their sport. In Utah, a high school girl had to be placed under police protection after being falsely accused of being trans because she excelled in her sport. Serena Williams, one of the most dominant athletes in history, has faced misogynistic and racist scrutiny over her physique, with critics questioning whether she was too strong to be a woman. I think about my own self as a little girl. As you can see, I'm almost 5'9" without heels, and I've been this height since around age 12. I was a good 6 inches to a foot taller than most other girls when I was a preteen. Looking at lines 136 to 141 in sub 2, I wonder if I would have been targeted for a painful blood test or possibly a visual inspection at 12 years old. It's a slippery slope to make decisions about who someone is based on stereotypes or how they look. It makes me disheartened and disturbed to think about the potential trauma this bill could create for both transgender and non-trans girls and women. There are many Georgians who are also intersex. Intersex people have anatomy or genes that don't fit typical definitions of male and female, and often people don't even know they were born with intersex characteristics until much later in life. That will add complexities to this bill reaching its goal of discrimination and exclusion.
10 seconds.
All people, including those who are not trans, are born with various advantages. Not everyone looks like Riley Gaines, and if every trans person was so advantaged, I think we would actually hear about a lot more people than Leah Thomas. Leah Thomas did nothing wrong for existing. It must be hard to compete and share a trophy for a few minutes. I do want to close with reminding you that I am a UGA graduate. I am a lifelong Georgian, and there are a lot better ways to help take care of girls and women in sports. We urge you to oppose this bill.
Thank you, Noel. Let's stay with the decorum of the room, too. There should be no clapping or heckling or that type of gestures, please. Kimberly Sorrells, or Kimball, Kimball Sorrells.
Thank you.
Introduce yourself, and then the microphone's yours. 2 minutes.
Sure. My name is Reverend Kimball Sorrells. I'm an ordained minister in the United Church of Christ. I am a pastor. I'm also a parent of a daughter and a former collegiate athlete myself, and I'm here to oppose this bill. As a pastor, it is my sacred calling to stand up for the rights and well-being of all people, particularly those who are marginalized. To this end, I find these types of bills that honestly kind of do some negative stereotyping that are false to be extremely harmful for transgender athletes and really all trans people. As a former athlete, I can say how beneficial team sports can be for our social and emotional well-being, as well as obviously your physical well-being. To exclude trans people from this is simply just cruel and wrong. And this is especially important because we know that transgender youth face higher instances of bullying and suicidal ideation. I want to note that I do have a daughter. She is only 5 years old. Right now, her interest in sports are pretty much whether or not she likes the outfit. But as she gets older, if she does decide to play sports or play sports competitively, what I hope that she will gain from it is the same thing that I gain, not so much about whether she wins or loses or whether or not she gets a scholarship like I did, but that she finds belonging and friendship, and that I hope that she will know and value welcoming any on her team that might be her friend as well, that she might benefit from their identities and their whole selves. Finally, I just want to say that with so many Georgians struggling for things like just trying to get by and pay the bills, I really wonder why we're focused on this. And it feels like this is really just political grandstanding, an attempt to discriminate in the same way that it was never really about water fountains. I don't really believe that this is about women's sports, so I urge you to oppose.
Thank you. Maddie Frey,
Good afternoon.
introduce yourself and the microphone's yours.
Could I have 2 minutes and 20 seconds, please? I timed it out.
Timed it out. We'll negotiate that for
fair,
you a little bit.
Fair enough. Thank you. My name is Maddie Fry. I'm a resident and super voter here in Atlanta. I want to start off by thanking all of you for your service as an elected official. I know it's a thankless job. And you seem like a fun committee, too. I came here today to talk about what women's sports is really about: opportunity, freedom, and fairness. I'm a lifelong athlete: gymnastics, track, softball, ski, played soccer through high school and college. After college, I found and fell in love with ultimate frisbee. We call it ultimate. Evelina spoke to it earlier today. Being an athlete has shaped my life profoundly. I'm 45 years old and I'm still playing this sport, if you can believe it. Last year, my team even won a world championship. In 2018, Evelina, who spoke earlier, and I were part of a group of people who helped to found one of the first 6 semi-professional ultimate teams in the world, formed entirely for women and gender-expansive players. We're called Atlanta Soul. We compete here in Atlanta, and we're the first pro team in Georgia. We pay our players twice what the men's pro team gets paid. The next year, we formed this first semi-pro league, 12 teams ranging from Maine to Texas. I'm now a co-owner and head coach with Evelina as an assistant coach. Our tryouts are open to players of any gender except for those who identify as men. And I would like to invite you to come to our games. Our first home game is April 5th at Agnes Scott College at 5 p.m. Bring your kids, bring your dogs, bring a blanket and chairs. Please settle in to watch some incredible athletes compete against our rivals from Austin, Texas. I invite you to see and experience for yourself what it means to be part of an environment that creates real opportunity for women and gender-expansive athletes. You won't necessarily be able to tell which of our athletes are trans, because that is not the point. The point is that women's sports is still very much about having the opportunity and freedom to play, recognizing that for too long women were not even allowed to play sports. Can you imagine?
10
women
seconds.
weren't actually allowed to play soccer until 1971. 1971 was not that long ago. And yet here we are today, still trying to take away some women's freedoms and personal liberties. It's also about fairness. I'm curious how many women's pro athletes people in the room can name. Caitlin Clark doesn't count. And yet here we are, still limiting opportunities. We need to be expanding them. So I feel frustrated as a woman who has fought for visibility and opportunity for women's sports for so long to have this massive distraction and negative impact of these kinds of bills
All right, Maddie,
on
close it
actual
up.
women's sports. Thank you for listening. I'd be happy to talk with any of you further.
Great. Thank you. Soju, you're up next, I believe. Introduce yourself, and then the microphone is yours.
Great. Hi, all. I'm Soju Hokari. I'm a trans athlete at Emory University. Also, I study trans athletes, weirdly enough. And as a Georgian, actually, I'm really proud that Georgia is the only state in the Southeast that hasn't passed a bill banning trans athletes. I think it's great. I want to go into on line 83 of the current substitute to SB1. Sex is stated to be defined as being observed or clinically verified at birth. And this definition is problematic in many ways. First of all, I want to address something that Senator Dolezal has been saying over the past few months, that if all else fails, a bar body test would be able to determine a student's gender. Back in February, I testified that the bar body test has not been used in decades to determine athletes' genders at the international level, and Senator Dolezal tried to correct me that it was used until 1999. Senator Dolezal, if I may ask you a question, in one word, do you know what kind of test was used at the 1996 Atlanta Olympics to determine the gender of athletes in the women's division?
We're not going to ask questions of the author. But you just keep going ahead.
Okay, great. No worries. It wasn't actually the bar body test. It was a test for the SRY gene. By the 1996 Atlanta Olympics, the evidence was clear that the bar body test was not an accurate test for gender. Many cisgender women who should have been allowed to compete had been kept from competition throughout the 70s and 80s due to the bar body test. test. In the late 80s and early 90s, governing bodies therefore moved to stop all chromosomal testing, and the IOC, meanwhile, moved to switch from the Bar body test to a test for the SRY gene. This test for the SRY gene was overseen at the 1996 Atlanta Olympics by Louis J. Elseth, an endocrinologist with Emory University. What I want to point out to the committee is that Senator Dolezal, his aides, and the other senators involved in drafting SB1 have no idea what they're talking about and have no idea about the existing history, research, and literature on gender in sports. They don't even know that the state-of-the-art chromosome test to determine gender is not the Bar body test, but rather the SRY gene test. I have a lot of other things, but mainly I just want to point out that again, Black and brown women have been overwhelmingly affected by these chromosomal tests throughout the world and in the U.S. And the wording of this bill with respect to gender and how it'll be determined has changed so many times, and I'm concerned that this committee would even want to try to pass a bill where a fundamental part of it, gender, is really not very well defined. Thank you.
Thank you. Brooke Mills. Brooke. Come up, Brooke, introduce yourself, and then the podium is yours.
Hello. Good afternoon. My name is Brooke Mills. I'm a legislative advocate and a bit of a legal nerd, so I'm so sorry, but I'm going to be inundating y'all with a bit of case law. If this thing will just boot up for a moment. Now, I just need to confirm real quick. We are working off of 2383S for the LC, correct?
That's correct.
All right. Let me just bring this up. So, first and foremost, I just need to, I know we've touched on this a few times, but let's circle back to lines 63 through 68 that are based on the definitions for sex and its observation at birth. 1 in 6 live births in the United States. Now, of course, there's a little bits of variation between states with maternal birth rates, but the average rate is 1 out of 6 has a DSD that is not observed at birth, and these numbers come from the MCHR, that's a UN. If you're not a fan of that, in the U.S., the Interact was able to verify those numbers. And I believe that's with the Williams Institute. So on average, in Georgia, we have we have an estimated 178,000 intersex Georgians at the moment who may not even know they're intersex or may have had a misrecorded sex marker at birth. And under the definitions provided in this bill, they would not be able to fit cleanly into either box. For instance, just within my own social circle, I'm friends with a gal with mosaics, and she has both sets of biological reproductive organs and biology, and under this bill she would be qualified as a male despite the fact that she is able to give birth.
10 seconds.
All right, then let me just round back to the case law. In regards to bathrooms, just because it's a little unclear whether or not it's confined exclusively to athletic events, might need to clean that up a bit. We're going against 11th Circuit case law, Adams v. Johns County, 2020.
Thank you. I believe it's Ben Ackerley. Ben, if you would come to the podium, introduce yourself, and then the mic is yours.
Yes, thank you. My name is Ben Ackerley. I am here on representing Transparent. We're a group of parents and caregivers of transgender and gender expansive kids. And I spoke to the subcommittee about HB 267, but I just wanted to come up and reiterate that as parents of transgender kids, we just want our kids to be able to participate in athletics. Our kids are beautiful little humans, many of whom don't care at all about sports, but those that do would like to participate. And while we're talking about a few very specific examples of people competing in a high level of athletics, most of our kids are just normal kids who want to play sports. This bill targets kids even as in elementary school, pre-pubertal kids who just want to play sports with their peers. A lot of leagues are co-ed, but when you get to school, even the 3rd and 4th grade teams are not co-ed, and this would exempt our kids from that and prevent them from being able to participate. So I just want to reiterate, bills like this, when our kids see you pass legislation like this, it can lead them to feel ostracized, different for their peers, to treat them differently, and to potentially bully them. And we just want our kids to be able to participate. And I ask that you please vote no on SB 1. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Ben. Chelsea Thompson. Chelsea, come up to the podium, introduce yourself, and then the podium is yours.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. So my name is Chelsea Thompson, and I'm General Counsel for Frontline Policy. We want to first thank Senator Greg Dolezal and Josh Bonner on their extreme work on this and their hard efforts on protecting girls' sports legislation in the General Assembly. And it's also been a privilege to actively contribute to the drafting and advocacy of the Save Girls Sports language, and it's inspiring to see it advancing so we can protect girls across the state. So this bill is simple. Athletics should base policies on science and biology and not ideology. Thus, transparency and consideration of biological realities are essential for fair competition, as this bill makes clear. This bill upholds the purpose of Title IX, which was designed to provide equal athletic opportunities to women. And allowing biological males to compete in women's sports across our state or access female-designated spaces in our state undermines decades of progress for women and girls, and this bill works to protect just that. Some important statistics just to mention as I close. I will mention that only further support the move to protect female athletes in Georgia. The UN reported that over 900 titles, records, trophies, podium spots were stolen from women by men. And this is not a one-for-one. So for one male, they can displace several athletes, as we've know by Will Thomas. So, but even one, I would argue, should be enough. The BBC Elite British Sportsmanship Study reveals that more than 7 in 10 women are against males competing in female sports, and 90% of those are afraid to speak up publicly about that. Female athletes have 20 to 30% higher risk of head injury when facing transgender opponents, and based on scientific strength differences. In a statewide poll, we see over 90% people agree with prohibiting males in female sports. We ask you we urge you to support SB 1. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up is Mac Parnell. Mac, there you are. Introduce yourself, Mac, and then the podium is yours.
Hey, Mac Parnell with the Georgia Faith and Freedom Coalition. I firstly want to thank Representative Will Wade. Thank you for your long time work on this issue, and happy birthday to you. I want to thank Governor Kemp and Speaker Burns and Lieutenant Governor Jones for their hard work on this issue over many years, and of course to the bill sponsor Greg Dolezal, and for Representative Bonners for Chairman Bonners' hard work on this. Really appreciate it. The Georgia Faith and Freedom Coalition is in favor of fairness and common sense for girls and women in their sports. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, that wraps up our speakers, members, and visitors. Thank you for your passion. Thank you for your comments. And we got one light flashing, number 25.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just two questions looking at it, and I may have gotten the bills confused. Locker room setting situation, looking at around lines, let's say 69 anywhere down through 77. Does it prohibit any kind of coaches being in the locker room, like for the halftime talk, the pregame speech, as long as the girls are not changing?
Representative, I would point you to line 195 through about 207. We adopted your House language to accommodate that exact concern.
Perfect. And last one, you probably accommodate then. Co-ed sports, sometimes you'll have female football kickers or female wrestlers who enter at the lower weights because it's hard to get the males at a certain level, like a classification, let's say 88 pounds or whatever it is. Any account for any of those females who may want to play those traditionally male sports, but it really turns into a co-ed sport?
Representative, that's on line 129. Provided, however, that females may be allowed to participate in an interscholastic competition on a team that is designed as male if a corresponding team designated for females is not offered or available for interscholastic competitions.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Going to number 4.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to say, you know I hate this, but let's just get it out there. UNESCO also put out a report that said that 21% of women in college sports or in adult sports, 21%, 1 in 5, have been sexually abused in sport when they were younger. Please, if this is such a priority, please prioritize their safety. I speak as a former sexual assault victim. Please prioritize the problem. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Representative. Number 10.
At the appropriate time, sir, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, I don't see any more questions, so it is appropriate time.
I'd like to make a motion due pass of SB1 LC 492383S.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and he just read out the LC number. Let's vote. I believe we're at that stage. All in favor of this LC just read off Senate Bill 1, say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. It carries. Thank you, Senator. Who's going to carry the bill in the House?
My wingman, Representative Chairman Bonner, is going
There you go. Got you. Thank you. Appreciate you, visitors. Appreciate everybody here. Thank you.